Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And this week, since the unfortunate passing of Donald Sutherland, I've been doing a few movies in memoriam of him. So I've chosen to do three Donald Sutherland films, one of which I've never seen before, one that's considered a classic, and one that's just one of my personal favorites. So I've already done the one I haven't seen and the classic, so today I'm doing one of my personal favorites, and that is the 1992 film Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Here is your trivia question for today. What are Buffy's 4 life goals? The answers will be at the end of this episode. So, at the beginning of our film, we start off in the Dark Ages and we learn about someone called the Slayer, who is apparently put on this earth to take out vampires. We also learn about the Watcher, who is the one that will train the Slayer to become a vampire hunter. We then quickly move into what's considered present day, or as they call it in the movie, the Light Ages, where we meet our main character of Buffy. Now, Buffy appears to be a vain, vapid valley girl and spends most of her time in school, at the mall, or being the head cheerleader. That is, at least until a stranger comes into her life named Merrick. Now, this older gentleman just so happens to be her watcher as Buffy finds out that she is now the new Slayer. So, as Buffy begins her training with Merrick, can she keep the rest of her life together? School, love life, friendships, and being on the cheerleading team. But will Merrick be able to get Buffy ready as Lothos, the lead vampire, and his minions are coming after her? This movie was directed by Fran Rubel-Kusi. The movie was written by Joss Whedon, and it really does sadden me to find out that apparently he turned out to be a really big jerk because so much of what he's created is some of my favorite fandom. One of which is even one of my favorite television series, which is the 1997 Buffy the Vampire Slayer television show. When creating the script for this movie, Whedon was apparently inspired by The Lost Boys and Night of the Comet. Also, if you weren't aware, when Whedon first created it, it was called Rhonda the Immortal Waitress. Another thing you may not be aware of is that Joss Whedon actually left during production of the film and never came back, mainly due to the fact that he was frustrated about how much of his vision was being altered and rewritten. Now, if you're ever curious as to what Whedon's original version of the script looked like, Dark Horse Comics did in fact do a mini-series called Buffy the Vampire Slayer: The Origin. So this version is actually much darker than the film, as in it, not only does Merrick end up taking his own life to not only keep Buffy's identity a secret, but also to stop Lothos from turning him into a vampire. And in the end, Buffy comes back to the school and burns it down. Christy Swanson does a great job of playing Buffy in this film, but Joss Whedon originally had in mind Alyssa Milano playing the character. Donald Sutherland, who is also one of my favorite parts of this film, plays the character of Merrick, but apparently Sutherland was also one of the things that rubbed Joss Whedon the wrong way, as he would constantly ad-lib and rewrite his lines. Rutger Hauer does a great job of being a vampire in this film, specifically the lead one named Lothos. And if you didn't know, the rumor is that's actually him playing the violin. Now, the tune that he's playing is Schumann's Piano Quintet in E flat. Paul Rubens plays another one of my favorite characters in this film, Amelin, who was originally written as a female character and was supposed to be played by Joan Chen. When she ended up leaving, though, it was rewritten as a male character and Rubens took over. Now, I think the vast majority of you already know this, but Paul Rubens is in fact the actor who plays Pee Wee Herman. Rubens, by the way, completely improvised his death scene, which in my opinion is also one of the best moments in the film. This movie was the theatrical debut of Hilary Swank. There are actually quite a few well-known actors and actresses in this film. Some of the ones you're probably aware of are Luke Perry, David Arquette, Stephen Root, and Sasha Jensen. Now, some cameos you may or may not be aware of. Ben Affleck appears as a basketball player on the opposing team. What's funny though is when he does his one line, that's not actually his voice, they ended up dubbing over him. The mechanic is actually actor Thomas Jane. The waitress who waits on Benny and Pike is Ricky Lake. The vampire DJ is Alexis Arquette. Seth Green was in the film originally, but his sequence of biting Sasha Jensen ended up being cut out. He would, however, go on to have a much larger role in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer television series as Oz. Now, Seth Green isn't the only actor to appear in this film that also ended up on the television series. Chi Muolo, who does appear as this vampire, does make an appearance in the seventh season of the series in the episode called Storyteller. Also making a brief appearance in the film is Christy Swanson's father, who is the referee at the basketball game. Now, three other actors that were originally supposed to make an appearance in this film were David Bowie, Mick Jagger, and Carrie Elwes. All of them were going to appear as vampires, but they ended up cutting those characters out. In 2010, there was talks of remaking the film. This time around, it would have starred Heather Elizabeth Morris from Glee, and apparently Vanessa Hudgens was also going to play a role in the film. The movie takes place in California, and it was also entirely filmed there. So when it comes to the film Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I love this movie, and it will always have a special place in my heart. But when I really take a step back and look at it objectively, I do have to say it's really not the greatest movie. It has a really fun story, and I do like the characters, but there are a lot of weak points and disjointed moments, so I think I'm going to have to give this one a 3 out of 5. Now, if you also enjoyed this movie, other films I recommend checking out are The Lost Boys, Teen Wolf, My Boyfriend's Back, and Once Bitten. Now it's time for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode. What are Buffy's 4 life goals? She plans to graduate, go to Europe, marry Christian Slater, and then die. Apparently, in the original script, Whedon had it as she wanted to marry Charlie Sheen. What's of course really funny about that is only 2 years later, Christy Swanson and Charlie Sheen would star opposite each other in the film The Chase. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.